Thank you for the fantastic feedback from my previous videos. I obviously love pulling apart all kinds of malicious software, and in my day-to-day job I see executables, I see SCR files or screensavers pretending to be screensavers, I see DLL files, I see VBS scripts, I see all kinds of stuff. I'm constantly pulling them apart, and yeah, look, through a bit of inspiration, a lot of feedback, a lot of comments, I've decided to start posting some of my little deep dark secrets. I'm not aiming to make you guys all proficient in pulling apart malware. In fact, I recommend against it. I'm just letting you know some of the tricks that are played out there, and what you need to know, what the back end is, how it all comes together, and how they try and weave their way into your lives. Right, so let's get started. Standard disclaimer: don't run these things, don't play with them unless you know what you're doing, don't obviously allow macros to run, don't enable scripts. All the scripts I pull apart here, I do it in a demilitarized zone, I do it in a safe environment, I'm fully protected, and in case I make a mistake, the machines are disposable. Don't try and run any code from this video. I will try and hide code that makes it dangerous. I won't let you run it. So here we go. First of all, we receive an email. It's come straight to me from an unknown sender, so why should I trust it? It's got a doc file attached to it, but let's look at the properties. In here, we got the properties of the header of the email. I'm going to pop them out to a notepad file. I've obviously obscured things you shouldn't see, but there's IP addresses in here. There's the time zone. There's the way it was sent, whether it was Outlook or whether it was through a webmail. Any antivirus products that's been passed through. Everything is in this header to tell you whether or not you should trust this email, including the spam levels and everything else. Taking the IP out of that, and I'm going to plug it into one of the many IP locators out there, and it comes from Arizona. I don't know anyone in Arizona, so why am I going to trust this email? So let's actually have a look at this, shall we? So we're going to save it out. Yes, it's a doc file. I don't recommend you run this, but I've saved it out. And I also generally save out the email that came in, and also the results from VirusTotal. Here we have the file. Now I'm not going to run that file. I'm going to use a special Python little trick called OLE tools. I've written a little batch file here to dump it out even if it's obfuscated. So here's the batch file. It just picks up any doc in this directory and runs it through this Python tool. And the Python tool will try and pull out the macros without actually running the Word file. So here we go. I'm now pulling out the macros. Don't need to worry about accidentally triggering anything because it's coming out as a text file. Here we have the text file. It's got some headers on it from the Python tool that I ran, but in general fairly easy to read. You can see the input file there, and you can see what came out. You can see it's come out in pretty much VBA. You can see what happens when it first opens, what script it runs or what sub procedure it runs, and you can see that the procedures have all been kind of messed with or encrypted to make it hard for you to understand what's going on. Like this, we can't do very much unless you're fluent in VBA. I've got a general idea from scanning through this what it does, but as you can see towards the end there, oh wow, they really hide their code. They've made it really difficult to understand. So other than running it, how are we going to determine what this actually does? And as I scroll down, there's more functions, there's more encryptions. They've written their own routines to make it really hard to read this. Obviously reading it straight like this is not going to help. Down the bottom we've got a bit of a summary. It tells you that it may run obfuscated code. It tells you that it may run an executable. It tells you a little bit about what's going on here. But still, this tool is really just for dumping out the macros without actually running the macros. Right, so what do we do next? Let's jump up into hybrid analysis and drop our doc file in there, and let's see what they've got to say about what this is. Obviously got to go through all the proof. I'm not a robot. Okay, proven. Now I choose an environment to sandbox this in. I'm going to choose Windows 7 32-bit. Why not? It's going to run in Office 32-bit, even on a 64-bit machine anyway, and let it run. Now here are some similar results from other documents that are very similar in size and hash. So let's go off and have a look at what they did. And what have we got here first? First thing we've got, it tells us we've got some screenshots. So here we go, there's an error in that particular version of the file, didn't run. In the background there, you can see it's a protected document and asks you to turn on macros. As you scroll down, you can see the IP address it tries to contact, which part of the world it's connected to. You can see it goes up to the internet and downloads things. As you scroll down, you can see the strings that are downloaded in the various downloads. Not much intelligible stuff in there. And you can see what stuff gets extracted. So you can see some temp files. You can see some links, all kinds of things that get actually spat out from this Word file that runs. I'm going to wait for mine to analyze. It's going to take a little while it sandboxes and tests it. Also test it over time, just in case it takes a bit of time to trigger. Dump it up to virus total. Let's see what it says this is. The other thing we can also do is we can have a look in virus total at what it says the file runs, what it actually includes, similar file names from the past, any OLE components that it uses. It's got a list in here about the VBA and macro streams. In this case, automatically runs a macro when the file is opened. You can see what it was written in, all sorts of information about this file. You can see the relationships, you can see what file it pulls down, what it's called, you can see the behavior. It asks for a GET request from the internet and pulls down these two text files, which is obviously more code, and then tells you if it edits the registry. In this case it does, and basically what it gets up to. Virus Total is a fantastic tool for this, and of course the community. Do they rate it safe or unsafe? In this case unsafe. And what have they found out themselves? So at this point, maybe I don't need to pull it apart any further because others have done it for me. Try and go to the website and I get blocked by my antivirus. Disregarding that because I'm in a DMZ, and looks like that website has now been taken over by GoDaddy and there's nothing malicious there anymore. Now, my file's finished processing. So let's have a look at mine, shall we? So this is specific to the file I've uploaded now. Again, similar to the others, but let's see what it does. Again, contacts one domain, one host, and pulls down files. As you can see from this tool, it also does a virus total check, does a bunch of things. So we can look at the URLs that it tries to pull down on. We can have a look at the GET command and what the reply was from that GET command. And we can have a look at all the bits and pieces that make up the file that we couldn't read before, because it was obviously all tried to be hidden by the virus writer. As we scroll through this, you can see it just talks about more and more of the VAT macros, the VBA, gives you some of the answers of what some of that code does. Really, we're not going to know until we try and run it ourselves. We can see that it opens an Excel workbook and it puts things in different cells, and that it queries things about the computer as well. Nasty little thing this. And obviously again, those two websites have been taken down, so it's quite safe to show this to you in the video. And a little bit of a list there of what it opens, deletes and creates. Cool little tool actually. Saves you from damaging your own computer. Upload it in this sandbox, let it do its thing. Right, you can see here all the various keywords that are suspicious. Things like creating chars and hiding things. You can go down here and see the individual websites it tries to contact, and the temporary files that get deleted and written. So a wealth of information. But let's just say you want more detail, you want to dig a bit deeper than this. This has automated it, but not really told you what's going on. You got all your screenshots, you got everything that you could possibly want to know about this. Obviously here's the page where it says, hey, enable your macro security, or disable it rather. But let's just say that you want to go to the next step. What is the next step? Well, you have previously dumped this information out to a text file. You know that it's going to go and do some nasty things, so you do this in a test machine obviously. You don't go and just randomly double click this on your own machine. You know from this particular thing, this particular hybrid analysis, the damage it's going to cause, so you can prepare for it in some ways. So you know what's going on, so let's go and play with the code, shall we? Like it says here, I've made some of this code safe. Right, so you can see that it opens up and that's first of all runs this unusually named procedure. Now I'm just putting some spaces in there to make it easier to read, but you can see it opens this procedure, and down below there is the procedure. Now even within that procedure, everything is written in such a way that you can't read it really easily. So we're going to go into developer mode. We're going to chuck the code into Word. Obviously we haven't run anything at this point, and we're going to go through and have a look at some of these stored procedures or VBA macros. So first thing we're going to do is auto open. Nothing there, so we shoot down a bit further and we see all the other functions and what they do. Now the auto open is opening, I can't even say that, wiggle blah blah, it's opening that up. That is a procedure below. Now I've just made it safer because it's not going to auto load if I do save this Word file. If you have a look at this thing down below, it's running another code. If you drop down this, another segment of code, here it is here, and that's what it looks like. So all it's doing is making a random number. So as you step through this, you start to see how it all links together. If we go back to that and scroll down through here, we can roughly get the idea. It's going to do something with a temp directory. We can see that it's trying to hide what it's doing, all this weird code. So the best way to figure this out might be to put a few message boxes in here to pop up results of these different queries. You can also use a stop code execution. It's always handy to know how to make code break, whether it be C or whether it be VBA or VBS or some other language. It's good to make it stop so that you can make sure it stops before it actually causes any damage. So always get to know the environment and the language you're playing with. Always get to know how you can abort and get out before anything dangerous runs. So here we are, we've actually put in a stop command and we're going to let this run. But before we do, we're just going to make some edits. We know that's going to create a random number. Just to make this work though, here we go. I'm now going to just make some changes so it will function and put in a message box. So the result now of this other sub function that it calls is now going to pop up for us in a message box. And as we go down further in the code, just making some more changes so it will run and putting in some more message boxes. So you can get a bit of an idea of what this code is trying to do. Right, and a bit further down again, it'd be nice to know about here what's going on as well, rather than trying to figure out what the sign of blah 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 is. Let's just run it. It's safe because it's actually assigning variables. Let's spit out what this variable is. So I'm going to put another stop in there so it halts at that point, and I'm going to push the play button. So the first thing generates a random number, then it looks for my temp directory. From here, another number, and then from there it hits the stop. So that's where my break command is. So I'm pressing stop at the top and I'm going down to see what the next section is going to do. Right. As we scroll down, I've put another stop command in. I'm just sort of swooping ahead, seeing what's going on. I'm putting some more message boxes. Again, at this point, everything's just been assigning variables. No actual code's been running. So you can see here it's starting to create PS1 files, VBS files, BAT files. So it's going to put something into runnable script. What is it going to put in there? Well, it runs this case command. And this case command is actually a call out to the internet. It's actually an XML get or an MHTTP XML get. That's what this line is all about. I'm going to put a message box in there in a minute so you can actually see that for yourself. It's going to go off to some domains. It's going to grab some information. It's going to close the connection, and then it's going to save those files and possibly run some code. So just so that you can actually see that, I'm going to take this thing here and I'm going to message box it. Right. So now we got that spitting out as a message box. Alright, and we are going to go back to the main procedure and push the old play button. Here we go. We can see the same stuff we saw before. Got the same breakpoints but we had before. We can see we broke just before the case, then after. So this is the header of the get. So we know it's going out and what sort of file it's getting and bringing that down the local machine. Now I happen to know that site's now taken down, so it's not bringing anything down. So at this point this code is quite safe for you to see. Bit disappointing really that I can't pull the code down for you live. but it's also great to see that people are taking these things down. Right, next step. So we're just trying to chuck in some more message boxes just to see what's going on. Right, so what I've done now is I've actually put the domain in there it's trying to contact and the file name it's trying to spit it out to, so I can actually see what's actually happening on the machine. And we've stopped again, another breakpoint. So at the moment we've got a pretty good idea this is going to download and run some stuff that is downloaded. So we now need to figure out what exactly it is it has downloaded, because everything looks like gibberish, and unless you're going to spend all that time going through and trying to put real names in all the gibberish, it's a lot of work. It's a very huge amount of work, which is going to lead you nowhere. All you're going to do is learn garbage, which anybody can do that's got Google. Really, all we want to do is get straight to the answer, what this is doing. So we need to see the response text test. This response text is going to be from that website. So obviously we're doing a HTTP GET. We're receiving a file as the response text, and we're saving that into the batch files and VBS files and PS1 files. So at this point, we're now going to message box that text up. Just need to make it work. So just need to remove a few things. Really, we can keep playing with the code, we can keep trying to get the best out of it, but honestly, I'm at the point where I don't need to see much more to know what it's doing. I can see what it's spitting out. I know roughly what it's doing. I know the website it's trying to contact. I know the text file it's trying to download. I've got a pretty good idea. I know what this is doing. So next step, let's just clean this up a little bit, remove some of the stop commands and go to the web. Looking up that text file, it looks like this is part of the botnet. There's a botnet a few years back. This particular file looks like it's associated with that. Here are the files that got downloaded. Pre-compiled these files earlier. So here's the batch file, which as you can see, it's just pinging, and then it's changing some permissions, it's downloading some files, it's doing bits and pieces. So really, it's a script leading into running yet another script. And there it is again, a little bit encoded so that nobody can work out what it is. We know it's a VBS file, but yeah, that's all it's doing. So what about the next one? So the next one is a VBS file. Open that up again, and this time this VBS file, what is it doing? Again, it's running more scripts. As you can see, it's downloading another file, it's putting it in the temp directory, it's running it. Again, it's compiling on the fly, so it's put some words in there to make it really hard to read what's going on. And you can see it's now going to run a PowerShell script, and it's going to run it with no profile, but bypassing the profile. And basically, yeah, it's executing some virus code. So let's find out what that next piece of virus code does. And here we have the PowerShell script. And I'm going to open that notepad, a bit easier than the PowerShell editor. In here, again, we can see that it's downloading from Dropbox. We can see all the files it's downloading, all the stuff it's trying to do. No real secrets here, it's in plain English. Little bit of a obfuscation, but really, you can see what's happening here. It's downloading a JPEG file. Obviously it's the little brag sheet that they've got, and then you've got the executable at the top there. Sorry, this is the JPEG file here. I think it came from Russia. What do you think? And then of course you got the executable, which no, I'm not going to go and run. I'm going to pass that through VirusTotal. Here we go. Now the other thing besides passing this through VirusTotal, I've got a few other tricks up my sleeve. I do rename these things to .vir so that I can't accidentally get infected. Nothing like accidentally, absent-mindedly double-clicking on an exe file and getting yourself in the mess. So here we go. I'm going to scan it with AVG and Malware bytes and a few other things as well. It's always handy to get a second opinion as to what these things are. And here we go. AVG, Trend Micro, any of those products. Bang! Malware, Dridex. Okay, so from there we can now go up on the internet and have a look at what the Dridex Dridex malware is all about. Banking Trojan that comes along, sits on your machine and records your keystrokes, trying to steal all your banking passwords. Excellent, lovely piece of malicious code this. Don't want that on our machines. It was a part of the old Zeus network, if you remember that, a little while back. So obviously what we've got here, executable that's now running on boot up when you boot your machine, all coming down through various text files that turn into PowerShell files, all the rest of it. Now let's run it. I know, living dangerously. First of all, if you look at the properties of the file, you'll notice the author and the last saved is a bit strange. One of the other clues that this isn't a real file. If we actually open it, as you can see, it tries to trick you into running it. So turn on your macros. When you do run it, you can see through Wireshark here, contacting a bunch of different domains and trying to download things. Obviously it's failing in this case because those sites have now been taken down. There's nothing there for it to get. As you can see also, all sorts of TCP connections. You can see where it's trying to contact things, and it goes to Dropbox and pulls down the exe file. Good old Dropbox, OneDrive and all the other sharing tools out there. Now what we've got is a Word macro embedded. Once your permissions, you allow it, it runs. You can't read the code, it's all embedded, and by the time you get to read it, if you've clicked it, it's run anyway. Downloads the Dridex virus and starts keylogging. So what's the moral? Don't open strange attachments, it's quite obvious. Don't allow macros, run good antivirus, change your passwords, don't let them guess your banking passwords, change them often. And there we have it, a strip down of a Word macro.